Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. So I wanted to continue a series looking at potential league starters that you could consider for 3.17. I don't want to go into full details, these are not full builds, these are foundations that you can start a build on, and a little bit on some of the methodology that you would use to go from that foundation into a completed build. So this video is going to focus on the left side of the tree, as well as having a fair bit of overlap on the center. The first video in the series focused on the right-hand side of the tree. So the first thing I want to say is just repeat a point. I won't go into any details as to why, just to repeat a point from the first video, and that is that Determination is such a good aura that you need to fit it into your build somehow. No matter what sacrifices are necessary, get Determination into your build. The numbers don't lie. It's really powerful. Use it. Secondly is another quick reminder that some builds want to use a build around unique, and build around uniques can be a little bit of a trap if they're hard to get your hands on. One of these builds in particular is going to be absolutely reliant upon finding a specific tier 1 rarity unique. I'll be very clear about that when I get to that build. It's not going to be for everyone that's watching this video, but it is something that's worth considering. But that's something where you might need to save up 300 to 500 Chaos Orbs. You will need to have a plan to do that. Ultimately, I think it's really important to check out the list of rarity tiers, which is pretty widely known. It's been circulated around the PoE community since it was worked out in 3.14. And I believe it to mostly still be true. If you're wanting to run an item that is a tier 1 or tier 2 rarity, don't count on having it day 1 unless you are someone with a lot of experience in making early currency really quickly. The final thing I want to add, and this is something wasn't covered in the first video, is that there is a website called poe-ninja that is an invaluable resource for working out how to go from a build concept into a final build. This allows you to pay attention to all of the other players that are doing well in leagues, and also allows you to rewind the clock a bit. So you can check out something like what builds were doing really well on day 4 of the Scourge League. And then you can say, oh, okay, so day 4 of the Scourge League looks like there were Toxic Rain champions everywhere. Well, let's have a look and see, how is Toxic Rain in 3.17? It's been nerfed a little bit, but it's still good. Okay, that's something I can now look at what these players that were successful at Toxic Rain champion were doing in 3.16 and are on their day 4 build. And then I can say, all right, this looks like what I'm going to try and shoot for. So that can be a really useful resource. So it's poe.ninja/builds, and then you want to make sure that the league you're looking at is Scourge if you're intending to play in softcore trade enabled, or go and have a look at the history of Scourge solo self-found if you're wanting to play a solo self-found, hardcore solo self-found, or hardcore trade enabled. Pick the appropriate league, and then just keep in mind, ask yourself, have there been any major changes that's going to ruin this build or that's going to make it better? And then adjust accordingly. But it's just a fantastic resource for turning a build concept into a finished build. And I would suggest that you have a look at day 4 specifically, because that's when there's a little bit more of a balance out in people's playtime. And also it's just enough time that the builds that we're doing well start to really float to the top. So first build I want to recommend is a Lightning Strike Berserker. So this is the quintessential left side of the tree, full-on aggression build. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense because dead enemies can't hit back. Berserker provides incredible damage scaling at the expense of almost no defenses. You can then make up the defenses somewhat nowadays with some of the massive buffs that armor's got, especially since the incredible power level of Determination at the moment. So with Determination and Molten Shell, you can get sort of just about enough defenses to make a Berserker fine in softcore play. And then with Berserker's just inherently tremendous damage, you can just whittle down bosses really, really fast. Now the streamer Kobe Black Mamba has produced a guide on the Lightning Strike Berserker. I think he's considering league starting it for 3.17, so that's something you could at least review, and then either decide to make your own changes to it, or decide to research further by checking out what builds people did in 3.16 along those lines. Next is an oldie but a goodie, Champion Toxic Rain. So the right side video covered something a little bit more experimental, which was Champion played as a physical damage archer. Toxic Rain champions were the second best performing skill early in 3.16, and they still look excellent despite the nerfs they've had to Toxic Rain's damage being nerfed a bit. Do expect that you'll hit a damage ceiling if you play this build. You're tough enough to endure against bosses, but you might take a little while to whittle them down. Your strength is the fact that nothing is going to kill you as long as you're reasonably good at dodging the worst things that bosses can do to you. Then your weakness is that you will take a while to kill monsters in turn. That said, Champion Toxic Rain looks like a really solid choice still, despite the 19% damage nerf. Next is something that comes with a caveat, and this is Arakali's Fang minions. This build absolutely requires a tier 1 rarity unique, and in the Scourge League on day 4, this item was 300 Chaos Orbs. So you will know whether this is appropriate to you or not. If you're someone that 300 Chaos on day 4 is out of the question, you can certainly skip this as an option. Arakali's Fang minions will summon a whole bunch of spiders that are just little wrecking balls. This also has incredible top-end scaling options if you can acquire the extremely exclusive unique item, the Squire, but it can be good without them. This build can be played as an Occultist, as a Necromancer, or with a slightly hipster approach, it can be played as a Guardian and more. And the fact that it can be played as a Guardian is the reason I'm putting it in the left side video, whereas otherwise it might have been in the right side video. But just another warning, it is going to be a 300 Chaos unique. It is not going to be something you'll get easily, but the dagger is worth it. You do only need one of them. It's not something where you're dual wielding this item, and it is something that will exist in trade leagues. It's not staggeringly rare. It's certainly never going to be headhunter prices. Next is the Inquisitor, and specifically Righteous Fire. Righteous Fire Inquisitor was the 3rd best performing build early in hardcore solo self-found in Scourge. It's easy to see why. It's a combination of tremendous life recovery alongside powerful defense, serviceable offense. So you've got powerful defense just in the form of regenerating life so quickly, regenerating energy shield so quickly, and then at the same time, you've got serviceable damage that is applied to enemies near you. The only unique that's it's not required for this build, but is very strong on it, is the tier 3 rarity unique Scepter Balefire. Now, Balefire has a divination card, and both the item and the divination card are sometimes hidden by loot filters, so just make sure that Balefire is showing if you're intending to play this build. Balefire is not very expensive in a trade league, but it can be a little bit tricky to get your hands on day 1 or 2, so just keep that in mind. Inquisitor, though, is just incredible at replenishing that energy shield and life total and making it super resilient. It tends to have enough combined life and energy shield to soak most big hits as well. The playstyle, however, is not for everyone. I'm not playing this build because I just do not like Righteous Fire. That's just me personally. It's worth trying once. I did try it once, and I'm glad I tried it once, but I will not try it twice. Next, we are going to look at Spectral Helix as a hit build. Now, this can be done by the Champion, the Berserker, or the Chieftain. It can be done by other options as well, but they're the 3 that I think are the best choices. You could also make it work as a Slayer too. So, Champion, again, you're asking, yes, that's because it's the best ascendancy in the game. Spectral Helix offers solid offense and is probably the best attack skill that utilizes a melee weapon. Early on, you probably want to allocate Resolute Technique. Resolute Technique solves all your accuracy issues at the expense of meaning that you can't benefit from critical strike investment. But by the time that you're in a position to start investing in critical strikes, you can then easily unspec Resolute Technique and start speccing into critical strikes instead. So once you've got serious gear behind you, it's time to outgrow Resolute Technique, move into that critical strike build. Helix is versatile and it can be played on different ascendancies too. So I would suggest that if you're going to go Champion, you probably want to go Impale and Resolute Technique early, with a view to going Impale Crit later. If you want to go Berserker, Elemental Crit is probably the way to go, although Berserker is extremely flexible there. And you can go Chieftain and go Resolute Technique and scale physical and fire damage. The Chieftain version is very solo self-found hardcore friendly. It seemed to perform really well in SSFHC. There weren't that many people that started it, but the ones that did seem to do pretty well early on. And so that's something to definitely consider if you're wanting to go SSFHC and potentially join in that big event that's happening in the race. Necromancer Absolution is next, and sometimes a skill that is truly awful just gets buffed over and over and over again until a point it gets really good. Seismic Trap did this, and Absolution is another one. This skill was absolutely awful in 3.15. Now it's good even without Doryani's prototype, and that very rare item, which is tier 1 rarity, same rarity as Arakali's Fang, several times rarer than Siobhan's Wrappings, several times rarer than Mjolnir, Cosbury's Malice, and the like. That very, very rare item does make the build even better, even in the absence of Scourge implicit. Scourge did provide a lot of extra tools that made Doryani's prototype even better again, but you didn't need those, and the build was fine just using items that are still available in the core game. Now, just a quick note, a lot of people have been raising, and this is only specifically about the Doryani's prototype versions of this build, So not necessarily what you would be using when you first get into maps, but something that you might look to transition into when you've got 15 exalts behind you. And there is a cryptic patch note line about negative resist. That does not affect Doryani's prototype in any meaningful way. It only applies to effects that multiply your resists. So there's a number of effects like Crown of the Cryophile, I think it is, Crown of the Thermophile from about Blight League, that multiply your resists downwards. These stack now to a limit of minus 100%, so to a limit of 0. They cannot go below 0. That's all that those lines mean. A lot of people have been saying that they felt that that ruined Doryani's prototype. No, it has no effect on Doryani's prototype. Doryani's prototype does not want these effects, because if you're at negative 120% lightning resist, and then you equipped an item that said 50% reduced lightning resistance, i.e. a resist multiplier line, that would actually increase your resistance to negative 60%, which is detrimental. So you don't use any of those items on a Doryani's prototype build anyway. That was just there for a couple of corner case interactions, just to make sure that they never really came up. Next is the physical damage over time Ascendant build. Corrupting Fever is quite good and has been for a while. Now, Corrupting Fever can be played in a number of different ways, and I know that Grimro is a content creator that has been playing it, I believe, as a gladiator for a period of time, and is, I think, considering doing that again, but he's still not 100% certain for 3.17. He did a really good guide for that in 3.16 though. So that was a Corrupting Fever build. This is a different one. This is the Ascendant version of this that uses Corrupting Fever and Exsanguinate together. And Exsanguinate has gained a little bit out of 3.17, not much, just the initial hit does a little bit more damage when it's self-cast. But Corrupting Fever is still in a really good place. Ascendant's Necromancer and Gladiator nodes together provide very easy capped block for an Ascendant. Capped block is good. It's a really powerful defensive layer for your character, and it can be utilized alongside a very juicy Determination aura as well to make you really, really resilient. Now, this character can be played either as a self-cast Exsanguinate, which was buffed in 3.17, or as a Spellslinger Exsanguinate, which is about the same as 3.16, maybe a little bit worse. So ultimately, there's a lot of options that you've got here. It does seem like the self-cast versions might be in the better place going forward. You could change between them pretty easily as well. So that's the Ascendant Physical Dot build, and that's the last one that we're going to cover today. If you want to see more videos from me, don't forget to hit the like button on YouTube and subscribe to the channel. If you're wanting to do a little bit of research yourself into theory crafting exactly how you'd want to build these, definitely check out poe-ninja's build section, because that will provide you the tools to get started. And then check out the Path of Exile builds forum over on Reddit, where there'll be a lot of discussion. Once you've got something that you think is in a good place, that you think you're happy with, go and ask people over there for extra advice, and they will certainly provide it. Anyway, that's all I've got on this. May your Varlobs have interesting results, and may you find a league starter that is both fun and effective.